Hi, I'm Bob Trask, and this is our weekly reset. This is where we come together every week, to have some fun and to be happy and joyful, and to get a little spot in our lives where things get better and better and better. Because every week we find a way to open our hearts more, to open our consciousness more, just a little bit. So for a half an hour each week, we set that next week up to be everything that it can be, and for us to be in joy, because that's the real goal, isn't it? To live in joy. And this week we're going to talk about healing our personal history, because every one of us have some old stuff hanging around in our subconscious minds that affect our lives and affect how we think and how we react and how we behave every day. So here's a question. What if we each wrote our life story and talked only about the pain, the failures, the disappointments, the betrayals? What if that's all we talked about in our past? And the question is, how dominant are those stories to you? How much of your life story, of your present identity, is wrapped up in those stories? I know that for me, I've had a good share of pain, and knowing what I know about how that can dominate your life, I've set it aside and healed it and forgiven it and done everything I need to do to try to keep that from being a part of my identity, to keep that from being a part of my life's work. Because every day that we go forward, every single day, we unfold a new part of ourselves. Think about that for a minute. That all time and all eternity is right now, tinier than the point of a pin, this instant, this instant. And of course, because we are chronological beings and we see things in a linear way, we see time as this thing that's stretched out, but it isn't the thing that's stretched out. It's all in one solid instance. There's only one instance of creation, and then an instance of creation is right now. And right now continues to change, doesn't it? Because it's a new now and a new now and a new now. But at the same time, those new nows are the only thing that exists, and everything that was in the past doesn't exist. So I think back about the people that have hurt me, the people that have disappointed me, of the huge mistakes that I've made. And I think about all that, and what I think is that's all just a part of a fantasy in a way, because it doesn't affect me. Accept that. And here's the beautiful exception. Accept that when I accept it totally and completely, it is the way it is. It is the way it was, the way it was. It was the way, the way. So that means that everything that I am right now is a combination of all those things, the sorrowful and the joyful. And we know from from the uh, the negative positive graph that I've taught you, you know that we have to have a certain number of negatives in order to have a certain number of positives. They don't exist without one another. But now here's the thing. When we focus on the negative, then our life slides in that direction. And when we focus on the positive, our life slides in that direction. There's still negatives and positives, but the negatives can be higher than the positives used to be if we keep sliding our life in that direction. But we can't slide our light in that direction while we're still hanging on to the old stuff, to the old stuff. So we allow our old pains and our failures and our losses to haunt us. Did you get fired from a job and disgraced and blackballed for something you had nothing to do? Did your spouse have an affair and it haunts you, or did you have an affair and that haunts you, or were you molested or abused as a child? Have you been assaulted, maybe beaten, and there was no justice? Somebody robbed you, somebody stole your money? Well, welcome to the human race, the human family. That's all of our stories. That's all of our stories. Bob Marley said, "You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have." Now, here's the thing about being in this human family, and we truly are a family. We truly are a family. Like we all have the same physical features. We all have brains that see and 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 recognize and concentrate on things. But those brains that each one of us have different aspects, so that when we see reality, we see it differently. Now, here's the beautiful thing about that. If I can see through your eyes, then I get to be you for at least a fraction of a second. And that wealth, that wisdom comes into me. If you wonder if that's true, then think of any great musician that you know. I don't care whether it's Beethoven or the Beatles. It doesn't matter. If you can just think of that, those those people, they they shared themselves, their intimate selves with us. And in so doing it, they enlightened us, they gave us wisdom, they awakened within us intelligence that we didn't know we had, wisdom that we didn't know we had. And they do that. So we're truly a family. And and the truth is, when you hurt, I hurt. And in that pain is a great deal of passion. And when I see your pain, as well as mine, it's called compassion. Compassion. Rumi said, grief can be the garden of compassion. If you keep your heart open through everything, your pain can become your greatest ally in your life's search for love and wisdom. Your pain can become your greatest ally in your life's search for love and wisdom if you keep your heart open through everything. And that means acceptance, doesn't it? You can't close your heart. I knew someone in the last 2 or 3 years who something happened, and she said, "My heart has hardened." I'd never heard that before. I had never heard that term before. My heart has hardened. You can't let your heart harden. Come on. Who's in charge of your heart? You have to keep your heart open. You have to be able to see me, and feel in my conversation with you, my open and completely heartfelt conversation with you. You must be able to, in my voice, in my face, you may be able to feel me, to feel who I am, my pains and great, my great glorious wins and my deep, deep sorrow and depression. You got to be able to feel all of that, because it's all here for you if your heart's open. And so is it open for everyone else in your universe. So we think about our mates. How often do we really look at our mates and see them? Not look at them, but see them. And when they're talking, we've heard that voice a million times. We've heard that story. Please don't tell me that. But if we stop judging, get our hearts open, and let that person come in, then something happens. They plant their flowers in our garden, and we become wiser by it, and we become more loving by it. But here's the thing that we have to watch out for. And I've done this in my life, so I know what I'm talking about. We let our suffering become our identity, don't we? We let our suffering become who we are. That guy that did that to me, or that assault, or that mistake I made, or I went bankrupt, or I lost all that money, or I I did all that, I did that stupid thing, or someone did something to me. All that stuff is in the past. It's fantasy. It doesn't exist, except it's still in you and it will always be in you. But is it a blessing or a curse? Can you make it a blessing by accepting it and accepting the wisdom that comes from it? Otherwise, your suffering becomes your identity. It becomes the identity of who you are. And you've known people like that, that were fully like that. You know, maybe they were told that they weren't bright. You're not very bright. You know, you're not well educated. You know, so you don't know what you're talking about. And did that haunt those people that heard that? And isn't that an identity that imprisons them? Here's some warning signs of living in the past. My memory tells me this. Conversations seem to revert back to certain times, certain people, and certain events. In conversations, that always seems to come up. And their self-sabotaging behavior. Of course, there's self-sabotaging behavior because those old memories of being hurt or being dismissed tell me that I'm not valuable. So in order to validate that identity, I sabotage myself. Check it out in your life. Have you been sabotaging yourself? If so, isn't it possible that there's some old stuff hanging around that you haven't accepted, that you haven't become one with, or that you haven't expressed? Maybe you have it buried in there, that you need to express it so that it can be set free to become wisdom rather than a rock in your shoe. Here's another one. Do emotional triggers cause you to think about people or situations from the past? Well, some of those can be good. You smell a certain perfume and it reminds you of somebody wonderful, or you see something or someone says something and it reminds you of something or somebody wonderful. But sometimes there's those emotional triggers awaken that rage or awaken that pain in you. And how do you handle that? It's become part of your identity. You need to express it. You need to be able to feel it. You need to be able to go through it, and you need to be able to put it to bed. And will it always be there? Yes. And will it always be painful? Yes. When you think back about it, yes, it's going to be painful. But pain is not suffering. Suffering is consistent, constant. And here's the difference between pain and suffering. When I have pain, and I tell you, I have had some severe pain, like 10 on a scale of 10 for weeks and years at a time. I know about pain. And when my pain was there, really ripping at me, and when I was in resistance to it, then the resistance became what? Suffering. The pain's not suffering. The resistance to pain is suffering. So when I was in resistance to that pain, then I was suffering. When we look back at old things and when old things come up and we resist them, then they become suffering. When we accept them, it is the way it is. It was the way it was. Somebody betrayed me, slandered me for no good reason other than their own self-interests. And now a lot of people feel badly about me or don't trust me because of a certain thing that was said about me. When that comes up in your mind, if you bury it, oh, it's okay, I don't think about that. No, feel the pain. Feel the pain and let the pain be there. And it may be there for the rest of your life. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, you're looking for justice, looking to get even. There is no such thing as justice. Justice does not occur. It does not exist. Justice is an idea. It's a direction we go toward, but it by itself doesn't exist. If you think you can go to court and get justice, you can't. You may on some occasions, but it's not guaranteed. It just isn't guaranteed. So another thing those are the emotional triggers. Another thing that we have that are emotional or that are triggers are waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're expecting something bad to happen because that's become our identity. And when we hang on to those old patterns, what happens? What happens to us? What happens to us? So here's the question today. How does our suffering serve us? How does it serve us? Because we wouldn't have it if it didn't serve us. And the only way that I can think of the suffering serves us is that it tells us that we're not much. It tells us that we're not worth much, that we're worthless, that we deserve to suffer. And so then we have those things that we knock something over and we say, well, I'm so stupid. God, what a mess. God, I can see why people don't like me. You know, I don't think I can trust anybody. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Oh, we could sing that song. But you know, my friend, you either get better or you get better. Better or bitter. Better or bitter. Right now, right at this moment, the choice is yours. Do we really think those injustices that were done to us were so bad? Were they really so bad that we should hang on to them? Young Bill Marion was convicted and then put to death for a crime he had absolutely no part in, right here in this United States. Leon Brown and Henry McCullum spent nearly 40 years in prison, in lockup, much of that time in solitary confinement for crimes they didn't even commit. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison for standing up for what he believed in. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't do anything. He just voiced his opinion, and he went to prison for 27 years, and he was persecuted and he suffered. And when he finally got out, someone asked him how he'd be able to handle, how he would be able to live with the resentment for those people who persecuted him for 27 years. He had a couple of things to say about that. One, he said, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it'll kill your enemies. Resentment's like drinking poison and hoping it'll kill your enemies. You know what? When I resent someone, it has nothing to do with them. They don't feel it at all. At all. The only person that suffers is me. So I think about post-traumatic stress disorder, which is real and it's a real way of suffering. And almost all of us are suffering from some level of post-traumatic stress disorder. Almost all of us. But let's look at the most egregious form of that. Someone comes back from war, and they saw terrible things and they felt terrible things, and they come back from war, and now they're in this terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. Listen to me. The enemy won. The enemy then won because they poisoned this person's life. You can't let that happen. You just can't let post-traumatic stress run your life. So you have to put it in order. And one of the ways is to seek balance. you write down, when I started this talk, I said, what if we wrote down all the terrible things that had happened to us? What if we wrote down all the best things that have happened to us in our lives? What if we got out a sheet of paper and just started writing them now? More and more would come to us. More and more would come to us of all the great things that have ever happened to us in our life. And then we start looking at the negative things and we saying, well, those aren't so bad. They only are so bad when we don't remember how beautiful things have been. Khalil Gibran said, out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are scarred, are seared with scars. The most massive characters are seared with scars. But don't be your scars. It's true that when severe pain came to me and came to you, it was awful and it changed us. It surely did. It changed us. We became different persons. As long as I'm in denial or in resistance or in anger over what incidents changed me, then that change cannot be empowering. That change cannot be empowering. Instead, it weakens us. Instead, it paralyzes us. Then deep in our subconscious minds, we become victims. And as victims, we react to life as though it's going to hurt us. You know, somebody cuts us off in the traffic, and rather than just allow them, we feel on some deep level like that's an insult, a personal insult. Now I say he didn't cut me off, I allowed him in. Difference, same thing happened. One was one way, one was another. Instead of getting on the horn and throwing a finger, you say, bless you, and let the person come in. Maybe going to the hospital. Who knows? Being victims simply means that we're not willing to look at our strengths. And therefore our weaknesses prevail. And victims are always powerless. Walt Disney went through some tough times. Everybody thinks of Walt Disney as this smiling guy with Mickey Mouse next to him. He went through some really tough times. And he said, all the adversity I've had in my life, all the troubles and obstacles have strengthened me. You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. Barack Obama said the future rewards of those who press on. I don't have time to feel sorry for myself, he said. I don't have time to complain. I'm going to press on. And he pressed on and he became the president of the United States. So please understand that I'm not saying that we don't have a right to grieve or to be angry. That pain that's still living deep inside of you, it's a part of you. And it's probably going to be there for the rest of your life. An incident happened on my 15th birthday that still haunts me every day. But I guess I shouldn't use the word haunts me, because haunts me makes it sound negative. It's just there. And it's painful. And I accept the pain. And is it going to go away? No, it's not going to go away. Now, people tell you about your pain, about your terrible divorce, or about your terrible bout with cancer, or whatever. People tell you, get over it. Just get over it. Come on, get up. Just get over it. Those people are real naive. They're real naive. You can't get over things. You become part of those things. It's like having a grain of sand in an oyster shell, and the oyster builds a pearl around it. The grain of sand's still there, but now it's something beautiful. We need to build pearls around those things that were painful to us. We need to let that pain become our strength. I feel I'm a part of you. I'm a part of the human family. Therefore, your Pain is my pain. Your disappointments are my disappointments. Your losses and failures are mine. And I understand because I'm just like you. I'm a human being with dozens and dozens of scars, some of them cut clear through to the bone. But our scars don't define us either. They just make us mature. They make us warriors of the light. So today, let's just reach back and grab all of those things that happened to us, all of those terrible, terrible things that happened to us, and change that into those wonderful things that happened to us. Because they came to us, they made us strong. I go to the gym 3 times a week and I lift weights. And when I lift weights, I tear muscles. They get torn. When they get torn, then they get stronger. And when we get torn, we get stronger only if we accept the pain and accept the situation and stop fighting it. And then we can share our compassion because we know that we're all one. And I'll tell you that I know this might sound a little outlandish to you, but we all feel all of our pain. If there's a child starving to death in some part of Africa, where I feel that pain inside of me. And if I feel that pain inside of me, then I can accept it. And then because it's still painful, maybe I can do something. Maybe I can send some money or vote for the right person. Or just, if nothing else, send my love, send my energy and my love into those parts of the world where people are going hungry. And even though those events might have been different for us, pain is pain. And we're all feeling it on some level. The Buddhist proverb says, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. Buddhist proverb, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So let's heal each other. That's how we can deal with our pain. Let's heal each other. Let's stop pretending that we're alone, and let's add another L to that word alone so that it becomes all one. And then we can move together as a family. And instead of finding separations between us, we see the similarities between us. And we bridge those gaps by just saying, I love you, and saying it in any way. That's a beautiful shirt. Gosh, you look great today. Thanks for being in my life. How are things going for you? I just wish you well. Just sharing our love. So we have to get that identity, that old identity of suffering out of us. And to forgive someone doesn't mean, okay, I make it okay that you did that to me. It just means I accept them as flawed people. They're flawed people, painful people are people in pain, and troublesome people are people in trouble. And they couldn't have done that unless they were in trouble. Just make space for them. Just make space for them. They're stumbling and they're in some ways stupid. Well, let that be. That's their path. Ebony Davis said, people are afraid to heal because their entire identity is centered around the trauma they've experienced. They have no idea who they are outside of that trauma. And that unknown is terrifying. Let me finish today by quoting Steve Goodyear. He said, my scars remind me that I did indeed survive my deepest wounds. That in itself is an accomplishment. And they bring to mind something else too. They remind me that the damage life has inflicted on me has in many places left me stronger and more resilient. What hurt me in the past has actually made me better equipped to face the present. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. It's so great to see you here and to feel your presence. And if you have a moment, would you stop by bobtrask.com and leave a donation? It really helps. I'm doing a lot of work in the world. I'm raising consciousness and trying to bring light into dark corners. And, sometimes some of that costs money. And to keep the lights on and to keep these weekly resets going, I'd really appreciate a donation. Thank you so much. Those of you who can stay with us for the next half hour, we're going to have some conversation about this subject and maybe some other things, and we're going to laugh and talk and just be together. But if you have to go, bless you. I love you. See you next week.